In the previous video on profiles, we looked at what the profile actually is. Now we're going to go on to color management and see how it all links together. So with profiles we have inputs and we have outputs. Input profiles and output profiles. And in the center we have the computer and usually Photoshop. So if you're scanning images, from your old slides or whatever, the scanner will have an inbuilt profile built into it, and it will output the image using a color space like sRGB, Adobe 1998 or something like that. So it's correcting its own inconsistencies and then it's sending the file complete with a color profile to the computer. So the computer knows how to interpret the colors from the scanner. The camera, well, we have a light source which could have it will have a different balance of red, green and blue light depending on the position of the sun, whether it's cloudy and stuff like that. So the auto white balance or the white balance feature within your camera will try and compensate for any imbalance in the lighting going onto the sensor. If you're taking JPEG files, this will be taken into account when the camera creates a JPEG file. It will then attach a color profile, a color space, we normally term this, sRGB or Adobe 1998 to the JPEG file. So once again, when it goes to the computer knows how to interpret the color data within the sRGB file. If you use RAW files, there is no color space or color profile attached to the or embedded within the image. There may be one just tagged on using the camera's software, but it has no permanence whatsoever. We can change it at any time in the future. So within the RAW converter, we'll be talking about Adobe Camera Raw, the color temperature can be assigned and changed here. But again, because it's a RAW file, you can change it later at any time. So the color profile embedded in the image when sent to Photoshop, okay, Pro Photo RGB, Adobe 1998 or sRGB, you assign this within Adobe Camera Raw when you send it to Photoshop. But again, when you go back to your RAW file, you can change this to whatever you want. Also, within Adobe Camera Raw, you can assign the bit depth, the amount of tonal information within an image to the image that gets sent to Photoshop. Because a RAW file has inherently the amount of bit depth that your camera can create. Now, most cameras are usually about 12 or 14 bits, and that's the amount of tonal information that a RAW file can capture. And you can assign what you want when Adobe Camera Raw sends the information to Photoshop for further processing. Now Photoshop uses its own color management engine, and it's called ACE, Adobe Color Engine ACE. Okay, so this is what interprets all the color information going into it, and it interprets all the color information going out. So this is like the central control hub of all the color information. So each photo has an assigned color space such as Pro Photo RGB, Adobe 1998. So ACE knows how to interpret the image's color data. Now, as long as you've gone and profiled or calibrated your monitor, a file will have been created that interprets how to adjust your monitor, because it's got its own deficiencies. So it knows what signals to send to the monitor to give you an accurate representation on the monitor of the color information that it's been supplied with. Okay, so we're getting consistent color from the camera into Photoshop, and then Photoshop is then sending the right signals to the monitor so that the color is still consistent. Printer profiles. This is really important as well, because we're using inks, we're using paper, and we're using a special type of printer. So each of these different factors will create or induce different colors within the final output image. However, if you've gone and created or you download a printer profile for that printer type, for the paper type that you're using, and for the inks that you're using, then a profile will be created that tells Photoshop what signals to send to the printer to make sure that that output is consistent with the colors that it understands. Okay, so we've got all the way from the camera through into Photoshop, through into the printer, all consistent colors because we're using profiles. But of course that depends on whether you are using a profile, whether your monitor's been calibrated. Okay, so it's all interlinked. If you're projecting, you may have profiled your projector. So again, Photoshop knows how to send the correct signals through the projector so that when it's using sRGB or Adobe 1998 color space images, it will render them correctly. If you're doing things on the web, then the usual thing is just to attach an sRGB color space to all your JPEG images. Okay, so that is what color management is all about. This is where it all occurs. It's basically just controlling the input colors and the output colors, and Photoshop is the middle of it all and managing the whole process.